Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome. We are so glad that you're joining us for the Sonder Social Week 3 August setup. My name is Katie Gideon. I will be your on camera facilitator. So I will be the only one on camera, only one talking. So that means you guys get comfortable, get cozy, get excited to work on your journal and your weekly setups. I want to give a huge shout out to Maya, who is my co-facilitator. You will see her in the chat. So as always, let us know what you need. You can set your chat to everyone, which is the larger Silk and Sonder group in the chat, or if it comes to hosts and panelists, that comes to Maya and myself. And we can always sort of help if you have questions kind of that way. And then I already love seeing all of our returning socialers. We definitely have kind of Saturday night crew. I feel like it's a whole vibe. Saturday nights have their own unique flavor compared to other socials. So it's always fun to see everybody there. But I definitely would like to know if there is anyone new, if this is your first weekly setup, or if this is your first social, or even if this is your first kind of Saturday evening social. And then, like I said, double check that so you can throw that in there. We always love new people, but at the same time, I don't know if they quite know the magic that is Saturday nights, and that's okay. But we are glad that everybody is here. We are glad that everybody has come exactly as they are, and we cannot wait to get started. Oh, we do have someone new. Welcome, Kayla. We're so excited. And Deborah, welcome. So, just going through some of the kind of initial ground rules, which is be kind and courteous to yourselves and others, no promotions or spam. Please respect everyone's privacy, no hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. The Silk and Sonder app is a great place for that. And then, as always, we will most likely redirect any customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com, because while Maya and I have some information, do not have any information around specific individual accounts. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So if you have had a day, if you've had a week, if you've had a month, we are glad that you're here. Take a couple deep breaths. We're going to continue to break away with that perfection, and we are going to use the power of pen to paper to set up the next week that we have so that we can kind of have control over the week that we want and see if we can start building those pieces together to have the week that we want to have. And so we're embracing our theme of freedom with August. And if you had come to some previous socials, I feel like this one's a little bit one of those that I personally do not like wholeheartedly embrace. I do outwardly, but internally, I feel like I put a lot of restrictions on myself. Or certainly, like I said, I've got a very loud person that lives in my head with a megaphone, and she likes to kind of chip away at some of that confidence when I want to outwardly display all of those things, and it becomes a little tricky. So I did like the idea of this quote with the your idea of what's fun doesn't have to make sense to anybody but you. I mean, kind of the reason there is like I feel like so much of what we have, especially around hobbies, becomes so much around kind of our personality and our identity. And I think it's always a little scary to kind of talk about, like, the books you like, the movies you like, the music you listen to. It can always be a little scary. And so it's embracing the fact that, like, anybody who knows you or loves you and supports you will support all of those things. So, kind of embracing that freedom of being the type of person that you want to be, the ideas that you want to do, and kind of doing and spending the time how you want to spend it. So I feel like that's, again, for me, a little bit tricky because it's one of those things that I outwardly do. But it's the same thing of like, well, I'll go see kind of things by myself or solo because I don't want it to be judged by somebody else because it makes me so happy. So I feel like that's kind of the duality of I deal with when it comes to freedom. So we would love to hear in the chat if any of you guys kind of have those similar feelings or how you're embracing the theme of freedom, especially as we are kind of near the like mid to kind of past mid month this August. And as always, we are going to start with our freedom mind map, our rosebud thorn, and then move into those weekly setup pages. So if you haven't joined us before, the weekly mind map is something that is unique to the weekly setup. It is not written or printed in your journal. So you get to kind of design that page. You'll find a blank page in your journal. Most people, some people will use the last page just as a place to fit it, or you can find kind of a different spot in your weekly spread. But these are something that are unique to the weekly setup. It is a way for us to explore different areas within the overall theme. So we are going to continue to achieve a sense of freedom in those particular areas, and just kind of always tapping into remembering what it felt like when we had that feeling of freedom in each new topic each week. And as always, we will include the previous weeks. And so if you are just joining us, you can work on week 1 and week 2, or you can leave them blank and just start with week 3. And definitely, if you miss one, we always record them. So that's why we include some of those. And you don't have to have an answer today. You don't have to have an answer right now. These are just kind of questions as a way for you to kind of explore the theme throughout the weekly setup pages. And we certainly enjoy that. They're great question. There's going to be 4 weeks this month, so you're going to split your page into 4 different sections. And don't worry, so this is the first slide. The second slide will show my designed example. So week 1, we covered personal freedom. Week 2, financial freedom. Whew. And week 3, we are diving headfirst into emotional freedom. So you can think about a situation or relationship where you felt emotionally constrained or restricted. What are the key factors that contributed to this feeling? How can you work towards emotional freedom in your life, allowing yourself to feel and express your emotions authentically? Yes, exactly. Catherine, you took the words right out of my mouth. There have definitely been some tough topics, but I do think they've been really, really magical, just in a sense of we've been able to explore a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper. And I will tell you, I'm so glad that you've come to the socials, because the chats have been so amazing as we just kind of embrace some of these concepts that we don't always share. And so my example is the one on the right. And so here are kind of some other ways to look at it and embrace. So obviously, how can you work towards emotional freedom in your life? But other questions can be, what does this emotional freedom look like? Is it maybe a specific relationship with an individual or a group? But then you can also define relationship in any way that you want. This could also include emotional relationship with yourself. The kind of thing I use in this one is like, what is taking up too much space in your head? That can be a way of kind of setting yourself free emotionally, mentally, in that kind of capacity. And obviously, this can be something that you can already do, or maybe something that you think in kind of aspirational terms. And then, as always, because we are talking about emotions, give yourself permission to feel the feels. Take some deep breaths. You don't have to write everything down. No one is grading this. No one is looking over your shoulder to see if you're working on this. So if you need to get the tissues, get the tissues. But it is still a really great freedom to kind of embrace each of these concepts. So for me, I feel like I don't always get super, super personal in the socials, but for me, the emotional freedom relationship in particular that I was looking at is my sister. She's 4 years younger than I am, and we went through that phase in our 20s. She was early 20s, I was mid 20s, where we were just miserable to each other. It was the bickering. It was just, we were unpleasant. We weren't good to be around. We didn't want to be around each other. And then we kind of went off and worked on ourselves. You know, time passed. We all grew up. And now we've been able to come together, and a lot of it is just kind of asking what we needed. You know, if she calls, it's the, well, do you need someone to vent to? Do you need advice? Or do you just need someone to listen? Or do you just need the pep talk? And so that kind of just redefined our entire emotional relationship, and just coming to it at a little bit more of respectful terms, on even terms. And so it became something that was very, very tricky to navigate. It did not happen overnight, and we still work on it, and we still bicker, and we still have those fights, but we at least come back in better moods to kind of more positively discuss, because at the end of the day, we know that we will certainly have each other much longer than anybody else we know, so we might as well work on it. So I would love to have the conversation in the chat if you want to share how you can achieve a sense of emotional freedom. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I know these have just kind of been trickier mind map themes and questions, but what really I think I find a lot of certainly comfort in is kind of reading through the chat and seeing kind of some of those people responding with same or, similar experience, and then just kind of the love and support and honesty that's then included there. So I feel like it always helps me feel like, well, it maybe is not just me and my weird kind of quirky relationships. And I always think that makes me feel a little bit better. And I feel like that always helps me embrace some of that freedom that we're looking for, because we know that emotions can be a little tricky to talk about. And then I love that someone at the beginning kind of talked about how do you achieve emotional freedom, self-care, exactly. Kind of why we're here with the like-minded folks that we are. But I think it definitely comes from a perspective of seeing how can you get freedom in the relationships that you're in. But what I also really appreciated was that kind of internal pivot of seeing, what are maybe some of the things that are holding you back, emotionally, either, providing the same care and courteous and pep that you provide other people. Are you doing that for yourself? And so we know that this can be a little tricky, especially with the feelings and the big feelings, but embracing those and realizing that you can take little steps in different directions to figure it out. And sometimes the first most valuable stuff is just like acknowledging that it is something. And once it gets acknowledged as something, you can then decide if that's something you can change. Is it something you want to change? Is it something you want to put energy to? Or is it just going to be that current situation or, that thing that is what it is? So thank you everybody for sharing. I loved reading everything. And if you, like I said, there was no pressure to do anything or write anything, but I've loved how everyone embraced it. And if you kind of found it a little bit tricky, again, take some of those deep breaths and you can always come back and revisit it throughout the week. So, with that, we are now going to move to page 44 in your August journal. And as always, we are going to just kind of move through these pages, but you can continue to work on previous sections. And then the way I will then present this is I will provide the examples, then go off on camera. And so we can always go back and forth. But again, we are on page 44 in your August journal for the Rosebud Thorn reflection. And this is a really great way to look at kind of the previous week. And I know some people kind of have different thoughts and feelings on how you look at the previous week, because again, it's in the past and we want to move forward. But it does give you an opportunity to acknowledge those highs, acknowledge some of those lows, and then, make that kind of decision of, well, I'm going to bring some of this with me. Am I going to leave some of it? Am I going to do something about it? And I think it's another one of those, I use it certainly as a litmus test to figure out what kind of mood am I in. Was I able to find roses? Was I able to find more roses? Or am I just in one of those moods where it's like, I don't want to acknowledge a rose. I'm just going to dwell in the thorns and I'm going to hang out like Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty in my little like thorn patch. And that's just what my week's going to be. So I need to plan accordingly. But the first thing is that I always do like to look at the rose, and the rose is a highlight, a win, something that went well, something that made you smile, something that made you happy. And then the bud is an emerging opportunity, something that you're looking forward to, something that you're excited about, something that's out on the horizon and you just don't know what to do about it yet, but maybe you can kind of cultivate it in a rose direction, or maybe you can kind of brace for the thorn that it potentially could be. And then the challenge, the thorn is something that was a challenge, didn't go quite well, whereas one that I like to say it's just taking up too much time and energy for that week. So for me, my rose, like I said, I'm a huge Broadway nerd. One of the shows I went to today was the Scott and the Showgirl. And the Showgirl, Frances Raffel, who played the original Eponine in Les Miserables, won a Tony Award for it. That is my absolute favorite version of On My Own. I just love her voice. I love everything about her. And so getting to sit very, very close in a very intimate space and hear her sing not only that particular song, but all the other songs, my little theater kid heart is bursting and I'm so excited. My bud, I have an upcoming main character club summer camp. So I'm gonna go hang out with a group of 40 girls in a lodge, and we're gonna kind of do the resort camping, glamping thing. So I'm really excited because I am still trying to find friends and people that'll hang out with me. But again, I'm gonna have to tap into some of those emotional freedoms, give myself permission to kind of shine so brightly. But I'm really excited. Gets me out of the city and seeing different parts of the country. And then Thorn for me is the Edinburgh Fringe Festival's going on, so it's just a lot of people. And I'm gonna sound like one of those like just angry old people that have lived here for so long, where it's like the tourists are just in my way, and that's fine. And I've accounted for it, but the crowds are just chaos, and you're just one of the things I always want to yell because I'm not a big fan of confrontation with people I don't know, which I feel like would give people confidence because you're not going to see them again. But so much of the like, you're walking on the sidewalk and you're like, what was the plan here? Sure, I guess I will move into oncoming traffic so that you can keep walking on your phone and all the things, or holding all the hands and doing all the things. So I just want to kind of shout what was the plan a few times. But that's okay. I'm used to it and it's still really fun. It's a very, very different vibe, but really exciting. So if you would like to share in the chat your rosebud thorn, we would certainly like to celebrate those roses, get excited about the buds, and then provide some of that extra support around those thorns. So again, page 44, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I do know that we do have quite a few folks, I think even maybe more than a few folks, that work in education. So going back to school, we know certainly impacts this time of year, the type of week that you have, but also seeing some of the other folks there that are sending their children off to, the next chapter in their life, those things. So I know the rosebud thorns can certainly get kind of the same situation can be a rose, a bud, and a thorn all at once with kind of those situations. So thank you everybody for sharing. And then again, this is a good tool to see, what type of week that you had, but maybe how we can make some changes to our weekly pages if changes are even necessary. But the opportunity to just acknowledge something that was good, something that was maybe less than good, and something that you can get excited about is really great. So thank you everybody for sharing. So we are now going to work on page 46 and 47 in your August journal, those weekly spread pages. And the way we I feel like a lot of us reframe it as this is your opportunity to figure out what kind of week you need. So you can ask yourself, what do I need this week? And sometimes you need the weekly pages exactly as written, and sometimes you need to make some changes or modifications to it. So just because we provide a bunch of examples, just because I present the pages in a particular way or sections in a different way, there is no right or wrong way to do this. And sometimes you can leave things blank. Sometimes it's using it to its maximum capacity. But I think there's also just the relief that each week is going to be something different, especially in some of those kind of milestone time frames. So I always think August, with everyone kind of going back to school and kind of readjusting to those schedules kind of coming off of summer. And then I also think in the holidays. And so the ability to kind of change each of these from week to week. And sometimes it's also just giving yourself the freedom to try something, knowing that it may or may not work. And if it works, great. We can try and replicate it. If it doesn't work, hey, that's also great because we have a new week and we get to start new and we get to try something new this time to try and figure out what works. So I feel like I always like to approach it. I've got a science background, so we can always approach the scientific method. So we will figure out what variables we need to change with the type of hypothesis that we're setting up, so that in conclusion, this time next week, we will have the week that we want. So, with that being said, we will start at the top of page 46 with this week I want to feel. And the way I kind of frame this is how do I want to feel this time next week as I am experience those roller coasters of the week that we just kind of reflected on in Rosebud Thorn. This gives me an opportunity to kind of have a goal or set a center, something that will come back as a grounding point for me for the week. And so sometimes that can be your word of the year, especially if you created one earlier this year. Maybe it's a word of the year that you're trying to embrace. Maybe it's a word of the month. Maybe it's a word of the quarter. Maybe it is actually the same word that you had last week. I saw that Kimberly had a lovely week. So kind of being able to embrace this week I want to feel lovely, and those type of things I think is a really great way to do that. But sometimes it can also look like you want to feel less something or more something. Sometimes it is just 1% better. Sometimes it's a specific word or phrase, and then you kind of define that type of word or that approach to it. Sometimes it's multiple words, and sometimes it's maybe not really a word. It's kind of an ish or a sort of or an e. And then stickers, we're big fans of using those stickers here. They were destined to soar on your pages. And so maybe it's I want to be as relaxed as the giraffe on a beach towel getting a tan. Or you can kind of create your own iconography with that positively blooming in the frame of a flower. So let us know how you want to feel this time next week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I love the intentional optimism that asking ourselves that question produces. So now that we've kind of established how we want to feel this time next week, we can now weave in the different sections to help support that idea. Just because I want to connect those sections does not mean you need to. You can certainly treat them as the independent little boxes that they are. So we are still on page 46, moving down to that next section with the weekly major 3 goals. But maybe these are the weekly minor 3 goals. Maybe these are just 3 goals. Maybe these are 3 things. Maybe these are 2 things. Maybe it's 1 thing. Maybe it's no things. You can certainly embrace it that way. A couple people will use it as the categorize those goals. So they'll have a professional goal, a mind goal, a body goal, a mind, body, soul goal. Some people will also pull the way they want to feel this time next week into specific things. So someone wanted to feel calm, centered, and creative. So their goals are have a calm mind, a strong and centered body, or a creative spirit. I also loved that the one in the top left, they switched their weekly to goal section with the weekly to dos, just because it's a little bit easier without the lines. And so you can absolutely do that. A couple of the other different categories that are there is productive, peaceful, powerful, frog, fun, and fierce. We do love the alliterations. And then you can also see that bottom one is they have, so they wanted to embrace particular aspects for that week. So they wanted to embrace planning, embrace doing, and embrace peacefulness. And then they directly correlated their weekly to-dos with each of those goals. So those to-dos supported those goals directly in a wonderful little bingo board setup. And then the one at the top also broke down potentially on their days how they were going to do a goal for an early goal, a midday goal, and an evening goal. So while you can look at it as kind of from a weekly perspective, you can also look at it from a daily perspective. And then you will hear the phrase bingo board. And that's, again, we just love the gamification of a lot of these things because sometimes attitude and motivation is everything. So you can also turn it into a bingo board. Going back to some of those alliterations with the learn, leap into, and let go. But then sometimes maybe these are goals that you have goals that you want to stop. So you want to stop the mindless scrolling, stop the mindless spending. So you can always turn those into the kind of no goals or the stop goals. For me, I usually embrace these are my mental and emotional reminders to get me through the week. So I know now that I've established how I want to feel this time next week, these are some of those reminders to help support that. That'll then overlay my weekly to-dos as like the things I need to do, but here's how I need to kind of give myself that either extra pep talk, extra reassurance, or those type of things that I just need to come back as kind of mantras and affirmations. So let us know in the chat if you'd like. Are you a categories person? Or are you just like, hey, here are the 3 things I need to do? Or maybe these are more of my 3 reminders to help me get through the week. And I would also like to know, do you like to connect all of these sections together? Or do you kind of treat them as here's one, here's another, here's another, here's another? So we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I love seeing the new connection around that Margot suggested of connecting the goals to the bud as a way to feed that and the potential there. So I think that was really a great idea. And that's another one of those that I love the socials because everyone brings their new and great ideas, but also just all of the ideas in general. And that's what I always recommend is sometimes trying something new, especially if you have maybe a less conventional week or maybe a slightly less demanding week. That can be a good opportunity to try some of these different techniques out. But appreciate all of the sharing that was done in the chat. So we're going to stay on page 46, moving over to those weekly to-dos. And I already saw that some people connect their to-dos directly to those goals, which I think is a great idea. To be fair, this quote kind of embraced the type of week that I had, and that was because I opted to do a few more things that were not on my original plans, but that was okay. I was going to embrace it. But it was the me writing all the things from last week's to-do list on this week's to-do list because last week's to-do list did not get as done as I would have liked it, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. I am going to embrace it. I made those decisions and I'm going to work with those. And so you can definitely treat it as a traditional to-do list, or you can take the ta-da approach, which they are the same concepts, except you throw a little bit of a party when you accomplish those things and you write those down after you've done them. But for me, this particular section tends to change from week to week, depending on what are the to-dos that I need to do or what to-dos I carried from the last week. And sometimes what I have found is that the reason I have to carry over so many things from the previous week is because I just maybe needed some help with prioritization. So that's when I bring in the Eisenhower matrix, which is the do, decide, delegate, or delete. Because I am a one-person show, I do not delegate much, except I do delegate, as I was telling Maya earlier, it's definitely like a street fair going on very, very close to me. So I don't want to cook, I don't want to clean, so I'm going to walk over there and get something from one of those places, which is also amazing. And then I don't delete anything, I will just usually delay it. And that's what I certainly have done with that to-do list. But using those different techniques to kind of help with prioritization can certainly help. And sometimes people will take the ta-da bingo approach. So again, that gamification as well as satisfaction. But then some people will also, again, categorize or maybe create new categories for those to-do lists. The Pomodoro technique is another one of those that's really helpful, especially if you have kind of a large task that can be broken maybe into smaller tasks just to kind of help you get going. But I think it's always a great way to approach, especially some of those maybe things that you're not as excited about. Another kind of tool is, again, just kind of recategorizing those. So maybe it's just a restructure of things you need to, what errands you need to run, what follow-ups you need to make, what you need to schedule, who you need to call. I liked the one in the middle. It was like a slightly different variation where they listed the things that they had to do in the to-do list, which I feel like sometimes that sneaks up on people, because at the same time, your to-do list is very much tied with how much time that you have. So make sure that you are including all of those time things, whether it's what you want to spend your time on or not. And then another way to kind of categorize those are the needs and the wants, where it's like, I need to do this, I want to do this, versus these are also the other things that I have to do. If you maybe had a little bit of trouble embracing some of those roses or finding them, maybe this would be a great place to embrace every day, those weekly wins or those happy thoughts. Maybe this is more of a gentle reminder of the ways to be, or kind of that duality, which we love good duality. Maybe it's a do this instead of this, and kind of find that counterbalance of, what are things that you want to do versus things that you kind of fall into doing. And then like I said, I feel like I have kind of embraced a little bit more of the to-be list, because I've had, kind of a shorter list of to-dos. And that's just because I think it's just that time of year. I don't want to jinx it. So kind of embracing some more of those to-be items, I think has been really great, but also then including maybe the not to do's, or you can create kind of a tailored to do bingo. So maybe cleaning is what you're going to focus on, or maybe it's kind of a back to school to do list if that's the type of thing there. Because this one, like I said, for me changes a lot from week to week, but being able to try out a lot of these different tools to see what works and what doesn't is really helpful. So let us know in the chat what are your to dos, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Loved seeing all of the different approaches, but still that kind of embracing what is going to work, and definitely trying something new, something different. Maybe it'll work, or maybe it won't work. And honestly, that's okay because we get to start anew each week, or we get to at least learn a new variable. So maybe we don't recreate it again. But being able to kind of have that freedom, or at least right now, because we know life happens, to kind of have that little bit of control based on how we want to feel this time next week. We have our goals kind of to help us with those type of things. And then we have the different to-do list techniques that we can use to either help prioritize or just help us get stuff done. So we are still on page 46. We're going to move to the habit and activities. I always get excited when Maya is my stage manager because she coined the phrase habities. So maybe you are going to work on a couple different habities. And the difference between kind of the monthly tracker and the weekly tracker is a kind of, I would say, a common approach is you can use the monthly tracker for things that you want to do every single day. And then I like to bring in the weekly for some of those things that I add the reality check, because my week is going to look a little bit different with those to-dos or the to-dos, and sometimes that's going to dictate how much time and energy and effort I can put into those habities that I'm working on. So I love the flexibility to being able to either set a goal or not set a goal. But the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a really great technique. I also like the idea of maybe these are less kind of things that need to be done. And again, some of those kind of more squishier reminders. So maybe your habit or activity is to kind of accept yourself, embrace emotional freedom this week. And then sometimes you have the opportunity to obviously throw some stickers down, especially if you're on vacation or you have other priorities where you just know that it's not going to be something that you're going to do or something that you want to do. And then I also like the fact that you could potentially break down your habits and activities by ones that you would do during the traditional work week versus the weekends. And just because there are 5 lines does not mean you have to do 5 habits and activities. Maybe you just need to do 3, maybe it's 2, maybe you're coming off of not feeling well. And so your habit and activity for that week is to just get better. So being able to kind of use all of those different techniques, I think is really great. And same thing with, I know some other folks will use this to try out a new habit or activity that they then want to graduate to their monthly tracker. So it certainly has the ability to do that. But I think someone pointed out earlier in the chat that because they're going to have family in town, they know that their to-do list is going to look a little bit different, which could then tie into kind of those habits and activities you have the ability to do as well. And then because I am still very much a visual person, I love the idea of adding the iconography there. So I always recommend adding something fun or something a little bit unexpected to your habits and activities each week. And since I was kind of embracing some of those freedoms of being all encompassing me and doing the things that kind of made me happy and wanted to do, this is the iconography for the solo self-care ideas, as well as just kind of a fun August themed one. So let us know what habits and activities you're working on, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. We are now going to flip over to page 47, and I'm going to combine kind of all these sections as we move to potentially, well, not potentially, as we move to wrap up. So the meal plan section is one that we know certainly gets repurposed quite a bit, but you can absolutely use it as a traditional meal plan. You can use it as more of a real-time tracker, especially if you're on a healthcare journey. Some folks that maybe struggled with finding the roses in their week would use this to track the one good thing. This can also be a version for the kind of to-do list. You can embrace the meal plan for the soul and include some more of those journal prompts and journal reflections. It is also a great place to include those affirmations that are in the Silk and Sonder app, and then being able to break it down either into a study plan based on the week or the clothing plan. We also have some folks that are very, very creative. So the haikus for the day, or embracing a certain word of the day, or reflecting on a particular word each day. Another one that gets repurposed often is that mind body health plan. And so this can be one of those that you can include maybe reminders to unplug for an hour and what you're going to do in that way. The alliterations for each day of the week. Nathania, who is amazing and in the chat, she does the I feel and I need start of her day, where this is how she's feeling, so this is what she needs to do. So another great way to break up each and one of those sections, I think, is also really good. But this can also be another one of those placeholders, is just those reminders, kind of those mental and emotional reminders, or another place to track those highlights of the day. They can also be reading logs, chore logs, any of those type of things. And then moving into the shopping list, that can obviously go hand in hand with the meal plan if you use it in that way. Or you've got another place to put a really fun bingo board, and you can certainly theme them on everything. You've got to celebrate the wins, just for fun, a boring stuff bingo. And then if you have a major milestone, be it a birthday, anniversary, some of those things, you can also turn it into that type of bingo board, or just self-care reminders. And then again, it can be a great place for those stickers, or another reminder for some of those more self-care focus, especially as we're trying to embrace some of that emotional freedom this week. Maybe that's where some of those reminders need to be. So I'm going to stop talking. I'll let you finish up, and we will see you soon for the closing. mute button. Thank you everybody for sharing. It is that time. It is definitely the fastest hour I feel like I experience because the very last section is the I am loving and the opportunity to just kind of shout out as another way to reflect something that is really making you happy, something that you're loving, and maybe that is kind of the replication of the rose or something like that. But another really just fun sections to do, and it can be done any day of the week, any time of day, or you could do a bunch of different things that you're loving. But with that being said, we have reached the end of our time together. You guys have been amazing. It's been really fun. And as always, we would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sunder app. But also, if you feel like you want to, we would love to see those examples there because you guys provide such amazing inspiration and you just have the greatest ideas. I love it. And then Maya's going to start including some of those links in the chat. Here are the QR codes. With the new and updated Zoom, the links don't always work on all media methods, but don't worry, you'll see those in the email afterwards. Here is a copy of my playlist. I will also provide a link in the chat for that. But you guys have been so much fun. I really appreciate it, especially as we embrace some of that emotional freedom. But I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your weekend. You guys are going to have an amazing week, and we hope to see you at a future event. And we will see you soon. Bye.